What's up, everybody? How's it cracking today? We're going to be doing some inner and outer tie rods on Honda Civic. I believe this one's a 2000. We're going to start off by taking this cotter key out of the outer tie rod. This one's real rusty. If I bend it back and forth, it should just break. See, just broke off. Easy. Try to make this fast. I can't get a grip on this other one with these big pliers. There we go. And cotter key. Bada boom. All right, we're gonna take our 22mm wrench. We want to crack free the retaining nut on the end of this tie rod here. 22 is a little sloppy on this side. It was 22 on the other. Let's grab a 21. This one's been replaced. It's pretty obvious. Looks like it's been replaced with a cheapo. So we just want to get it cracked free. So we're going to turn it clockwise, tighten it. There we go. And we're going to turn it just a quarter a turn so we know how far we turned out. It's free, looking good. Now we got a 17mm on this nut. It was 17 on the other side. Looks like it's 16 on this side. All right, things have been changed. You'll run into that. We got our 16 socket here now. That ought to fit good on her. Right there. We'll get the outer tie rod off, then the inner tie rod off. We'll zip this off. Having air makes everything easier. Now we want a big hammer. We'll grab the big hammer from right here. Hope you guys can see everything all right on this one. I'm at an upward angle. I got it way high in the sky. We're gonna hit the steering knuckle. Give it some vibrations, and that's gonna suck it loose. There we go. Now this is gonna go in for an alignment afterwards, but we're still gonna try to get it as close as possible, so we're gonna count the turns off. Make sure your inner tie rod doesn't spin, just your outer. 3. 8. 19.5. We want to write that down somewhere because I got a memory like that, you know. We're gonna write it in the mud. Oh, there's not enough mud. Let me write that down on my board. I will forget. There we go. All right, now we gotta work on getting that inner tie rod off. First, we gotta take this nut off. We got a nut to take off here so we can pull our boot off. You can see this boot is already torn. Just notice that. So it needs a new boot. And we gotta take, if we go underneath the car, we got this little vent hose with a little clip. Those usually come off real easy. You use some needle nose pliers. And looks like this has been done before, and a zip tie has been put on there. You can use the metal clamps. Zip ties hold up actually on these, so you can use the zip tie if you want, or you can replace it with the metal clamps. All right, so on that nut, we had a 22mm on the other side. Let's see, but it was 21 on this side, right? We'll grab a 21. Socket, deep well so we can get to it. Where is the 21? I don't know where the 21 is. 13/16 ought to work. Same size. Oh, it's a little tight, a little snug, but it fits on there. Get the old air gun. And most of the time it's just going to zip off of there, but this, not the case this time. So we need to know what size that inner tie rod hold down is. Oh, let's try a 15. Oh, 15 might be a little big, I don't know. Yeah, 15 is a little big. Grab a 13 and a 14. Use a crescent wrench or vice grips. Now it'll be a hex that you can grip onto on the inner tie rod. There we go. Stood still. If that inner tie rod wasn't so worn out, it would have been able to spin off with the impact. All right, now we got to break that vice zip tie that's holding down the inner boot. We're just going to give it a little snip. Kind of tough to get in there, but we'll get it from the side. There we go. It's off of there. Now we get our needle nose pliers on that little clamp to the vent hose. And we will squeeze and pull. Came off super easy. These guys do not like to come off easy. The spring is kind of like a little spring clamp on the end of these inner tie rod boots. I like to use a screwdriver on them to get them over the hump of the inner tie rod. This boot's no good, so it just came right off easy. Usually I'll take a screwdriver. It's like a 3-ring kind of spring, and kind of just push them forward, and it'll get the rubber to go forward. All right, now we're gonna grab our inner tie rod tool. You can get on here with a wrench, no problem. This is the passenger side. I don't know about the driver's side, probably. We've got, the other side was 1 5/16-ish. Your inner tie rod tool goes on the flat spots. This car is raining on me. Fix my tool. My tool's a little off of the line. I don't know why that does that to me, but it does. The inner tie rod tool. Boom, locked in. Stay. Thank you. And we'll take our breaker bar to the end of the inner tie rod tool. Break it free. Lefty loosey. There we go. Now it should just spin off of there pretty easily. All right, this one's not cooperating. It is loose. There we go. Here she comes. There's a little plate in between the rack and pinion, piston, and the inner tie rod. Pretty much only fits in one way. It got these little tabs on it. So that comes off of there. All right, and this one's real loosey-goosey, rusted. Yeah, that one needed replaced. All right, that's removal. Now we got to get ready for install on this guy. All right, guys, we're back to working on this inner outer tie rod job. Got our inner tie rod right here. Add a little extra grease there. Yeah, you want to try to see, you want to match up your old and new inner and outer tie rod, make sure they're the same length. These ones are. But it doesn't really matter if you're taking it right up to the alignment shop afterwards. Just get it as close as you can. This one's going up to the alignment shop tomorrow. Yep, that goes in like that. We got our little washer. Came with the inner tie rod. That's gonna go right on there. On that threaded end. And all you're gonna see is my back for a minute. You're gonna thread this inner tie rod on there. As far as we can by hand. There we go. And we got our tie rod tool right here. We're gonna put our little crow's foot doohickey that came with the inner tie rod tool on there. You can rent these tools from the parts store. Most of them do a rent-a-tool program. We're gonna put that crow's foot through the slot of the tie rod tool. I'm gonna take my breaker bar off of it for now. And it's gonna make my camera fall down. Oh my God. Technical difficulties. There we go. Boom, we're over it. Now we're spinning, tightening up that inner tie rod. As tight as it goes by hand, we're gonna grab our breaker bar and get her tight. You can put some Loctite on your inner tie rod too. This one, I didn't see it recommend Loctite. It's never a bad idea. Get it nice and tight. There we go. I added a little extra grease inside there. All right, we are going to put our boot on now. Replace your boot if it's bad. And we need to get this boot to go over the rack and pinion on the inside. I'm just gonna try to turn the steering wheel a little bit. Press in on this. That way the boot doesn't have to travel as far to get over it. Now this could be a little bit of a pain on some vehicles, but not too bad on this one. There we go, we got the boot over it. And we've got our vent hose to plug back in. Boom, vent hose plugged back in. Now you're gonna have yourself a little metal clamp for these tie rod boots, or just throw a zip tie over them. You know, something to keep the boot from coming off the rack. I'm fishing that around there. And there's a little groove that it goes into on the tie rod boot. We're gonna tighten it up. Perfect. Cut off the extra here. All right, boots back on. Now it came with a new nut. So it's time to put that new nut back on. Spin, spin, spin. All right. You can grab a little bit of grease and just put some on the threads so the new tie rod doesn't lock up or anything. Just in case it ever has to come off again, it'll come off easy. Make it easier for the next guy. All right, we got our new tie rod outer. I already put the Zerk fitting in. You should be getting the ones with Zerk fittings. Better quality, you're able to grease them. That was an 8mm. All right, we need 19.5 spins. The tie rod faces downwards. There's one hand. 6. We gotta turn this nut in a little. All right, there's our 19.5 spins. We'll take this nut off. Tighten up the locking nut on the back of the tie rod as much as we can by hand. And fit our tie rod into the steering knuckle. This tie rod's really stiff. It needs to come out for me a little. There we go. So that it goes into the slot of the steering knuckle. Get our new nut. Came with a cotter key too. So we're gonna tighten that up. I think it was a 17 millimeter. So we gotta tighten it a little more. We gotta line up the hole of the cotter key, and we always do that by tightening, not loosening. A little more. Perfect. We send our cotter key through and bend it. And then we got our 22 millimeter wrench. We're gonna tighten up this locking nut by going counterclockwise, if we're facing it, up against the back of the outer tie rod. Nice and tight. You don't want to leave that guy loose. We need some chassis grease. And we're gonna tighten up this, or we're gonna grease up this outer tie rod until it mushrooms out a little bit on us. And I need a new cartridge of grease. So, there we go. Now she's ready for the alignment shop. Inner and outer tie rod's done.